We are back here, and your question is where can we access this lesson, right? In future, but you don't need to. You are here. but anyway, you're gonna see it again. Like I said, if you have insomnia, you cannot sleep. I will post the link on Olive. Wow, that's great. None of you can access it, right? I will also ask Sherry to email the link out so you can see it. And then your friends who couldn't make it today also will get a chance to see it. So I want to thank one of you for spotting my typo. I would of course like to say that I put a typo there to test to see whether you're paying attention, but actually it is not. One of the problems of having too many long sentences is that when you shorten them, sometimes you forget to delete a certain important word, such as the word not. If ever you needed any convincing that one word can make a lot of difference in a contract, the word not is there. Thank you very much for spotting. I forgot after I changed the word does not into doesn't, I forgot to delete the word not. So where is such a thing as doesn't not? Actually, lawyers will use the word doesn't not, but actually it doesn't have to accept. Yeah, doesn't not means have. Not means yes. But in this case, I was not being so complex. What I actually meant to say is doesn't. Okay? And the rest of you are being very polite, thinking that, oh, this guy, probably he's trying to give some very complex way of saying it. No, actually it's a typo. So you see, I put a strikeout there, okay? So you can do the same thing onto your copy here, strike it out. Okay? So now we are going to look at this thing. What if, because all along right now in the past, like 30 minutes, we're talking about the buyer has a right to reject the goods. But what if the buyer actually has accepted them? So the law works like this, right? If you accept, then you accept. You don't go and turn around and say that I want to reject. So the question is, when do you know that the buyer has accepted? The most obvious one is number one. The buyer intimates to the seller that he has accepted the goods. Wow, what intimate? Intimate is like lingerie, you know? Very intimate. What kind of conversation are you having with your buyer? Actually, it's a complicated word of saying tells you. Okay, so you can replace this with a four-letter word, tells. Intimate. So, intimates to the seller. You told, so if the buyer told the seller, I accept the goods, that's kind of a sale. What is the clear way in which you tell the buyer you accept the goods? Sign the PO, very good. Secondly, if the buyer does an act inconsistent with the ownership of the seller. Now, if the buyer has received the goods, right, and it is not clear whether it is rejected or accepted yet, he did not intimate, he did not tell the seller that he accepted. So you're kind of, the seller, you're kind of accept, reject. But the buyer does something which is inconsistent. What would be inconsistent? Think of what is one thing that he could do which is inconsistent with the fact that the seller still owns it? Correct. Resell to somebody else. The fact that he resells must mean that he accepts one. How can he resell if he doesn't accept? So that is a very good example. Reselling is an act which is inconsistent. Once the buyer starts reselling any part of it, he cannot reject it. Third option, buyer retains the goods beyond a reasonable time. So let's look at this. Question one, horizontal question one. To show of hands, how many of you think the buyer has the right to reject? Assuming that everybody is telling the truth, Assuming, because of course we believe everybody is telling the truth. So assuming everybody is telling the truth, does the buyer have to reject in scenario 1? How many of you say yes? How many of you say no? How many of you not sure? Thank you for being honest. If the seller is telling the truth, okay, buyer says, I'm rejecting the goods. But the seller says, but you told me on the delivery day that you said. What has the buyer done? According to the language of the Sale of Goods Act. By our normal human English, we say change, right? But what did he do on the delivery date? He accepted, yes. He had intimated that he accepted. He told her, okay, so can he reject? Cannot. Okay. Scenario 2. I'm rejecting the goods that you delivered last month. The seller says, but you cannot deliver 1 month. Can he reject? No, because it is part 3, beyond a reasonable time. Wow, very good. What if you accept but your boss reject? So this brings us to the concept of agency law. At which point? Oh, agency. So, did you cover agency in contract? Who has the authority to accept or reject? You cover it? Apparent authority, actual authority, inside authority. Okay, some of you did, some of you didn't. Okay, so you know your grade. Try and summarize in 3 bullet points. Agency law. This is one entire lecture. I summarize in 3 bullet points. If you have the authority to accept, then your acceptance is acceptance. If you don't have authority to accept, then your acceptance doesn't count. It's called bopake. Okay? Your acceptance doesn't count. But scenario number 3, if you look like you have the ability, you have the authority, that means your title says whatever manager, whatever director, or you have your name card, whatever. If you look like you have the authority, your acceptance is still considered as acceptance by the whole company. Okay? So then, did that answer the question? So if your boss sent you to sign, then your boss better trust you. Because if you look like you have the authority to sign and you sign, your boss is stuck.
Usually for the company, right, actually buying is a procedure, we are saying, but the delivery is to the store. So actually, when the store signs the goods, right, when you check from the store, right, from the store, actually, company will check.
Now, see, this is a very good point. Your delivery is offered to the store. Can the storeman accept the product on behalf of the company? The storeman is saying that I have received delivery, but your contract should state when the acceptance actually takes place of the product. For many of your cases, you actually have things like user acceptance test. You actually have a process by which somebody who has the power to sign off will sign off before money is paid. Some are saying yes, some are not. Those who are not, start to consider. Do you have in your contract who can actually accept? Otherwise, you have that problem. And it is a problem that the storeman can accept. Then if that's how you deal, if according to your contract or according to your normal course of dealing, it is based on the invoice rather than the DO, and then that protects you.
But again, the store will count the number of goods and goods, but you won't know whether goods will work.
Yeah.
So it is up to us as the engineers to qualify whether good or not.
You're correct. The storeman cannot check whether it matches all the description, matches the sample, matches the satisfactory, which is why your contract has to be clear. When the thing arrives and the storeman signs, your contract must say that is not the acceptance point. The acceptance point is when the engineer signs off. So then, you see, this is a very, very simplistic situation. In a simplistic situation, the buyer is the user. So the buyer has the knowledge of checking. This is a very simplistic situation. But the situation that you are describing is actually more complex. And in that kind of situation, you and I know common sense is the storeman is not qualified to check. But it is much better to state clearly that the acceptance only happens when the engineer signs. Or in your case, you're talking about your boss. Maybe your boss wants to reserve the right to sign. So only whatever level, director level or manager level can sign. So there must be also clear who can sign, who can accept. Otherwise, the seller is going to turn around and say, hey, you accepted one. I got a signature there. I know that I got a job, company job, right? Because storeman has a company job. So it looks, so that is why it becomes important to make sure your contract says who is the one who can count as accepted. Remember, Sale of Goods Act does not replace your contract. Sale of Goods Act comes in when your contract is not clear, or your contract left off someone. And when you are dealing with the size of contract that you have, you need to cover these things more specifically for your workers. Sale of Goods Act is more, it is not meant for something as complex a situation. Because you should, by right, have an express term that actually covers what you're talking about. But in case you left it out, then I tell you this is what happened. If your contract left it out, this is what will happen. You will have a question mark there. Then you will have a dispute. So the answer is your contract has to cover it clearly. Otherwise, you have to argue. Good question. Wow, very good question. So I made the guy wear a necktie, right? So it's a non-consumer. Actually, consumer also will be subject to this because this section doesn't distinguish. Yeah. This section doesn't distinguish. So even a consumer cannot be so. Right? And in terms of fairness, especially consumer, I mean, if you're a consumer and you accept, you accept. You don't accept, you don't sign. Or if you are holding on to a product for a few months or a month, then you can reject. This is in terms of we can kind of like agree that it's fair. Good question. Maybe next time I put one with tie, one without tie. Okay. Wow, this rejecting thing is very fierce. Okay, that's for rejecting. But mind you, if your storeman receive it and say worst case, somebody senior happened to be at the store and they blindly sign, then you're stuck, right? It's acceptance, right? Don't worry, you only gave up the right to reject. You still have the right to sue for damage, right? Your right is no longer as powerful. Rejecting is the most powerful. You kick them out. Go away. Don't step into my door. Right? But even if you can't reject, you can still get compensation. Say, you disable the thing, everything is not compatible, the laptop switches off by itself. Okay, so here is where the seller did not deliver. So the buyer can sue the seller for non-delivery. And I think the first paragraph should be no surprise to anybody. It's nothing to underline. The answer is quite obvious. If you don't deliver, sue them. The second one is more important. What is your damages? Is the difference between contract price and market price at the time they should have been delivered. I was hoping that this visualizer would be on. But it is not. So, no picture. So if we were to say damages, let's say your contract price, right, is 1,000, but the market price at the time is 1,200. What will the buyer normally do if they can't get the product from the supplier? They will have to buy from somebody else, and they have to buy black market. Okay, okay, it means we cannot be bought from anywhere else. If you can get a ship, then buy a ship first. Okay, so if the market price is 1,002, but the original contract price is 1,000, what kind of compensation will the buyer want? How much compensation will the buyer want? Because instead of getting the product at $1,000, he now has to pay 1,200. How much compensation will the buyer want? Does he want $1,000 compensation? Does he want $1,200 compensation? Or does he want $200 compensation? $200. Seems logical, right? $200, right? And it is backed up by this. It is the difference in the contract price, right? Can the buyer ask for more? You're hopeful. Okay, wait, don't worry, there's another slide coming out. So this is called compensation. The damages for non-delivery is called compensation. This is part one. So remember, you got the right to reject, but if you cannot reject, then you can fall back on this. Okay? Now, if you have this one, you get the 200. Why are you asking for 200? Because that's the extra you have to pay, right? You're not going to ask for the 1,000 because no matter what, you have to pay the 1,000 base price. It's just that now you pay extra. By the way, do you still have to pay the seller? No, you don't have to pay the seller. That's why you only want 200 more. Right? Logical, huh? Okay, those who don't find it logical, you can watch the video again. Okay. Now this one is a breach of the warranty. Section 51, which we looked at just now, would you consider this to be a breach of condition or warranty? Condition, right? Because condition, we know, is the most important. Is it important that he didn't deliver the thing at all? Yes, that's really important. So you can consider the contract as terminated. So what if he didn't breach the condition, but he only breached a warranty? So the warranty is all of the, and I'm looking at this laptop, all of the laptop is supposed to be Windows 8. Instead, it gives me Windows Vista. I say Vista because those who get Windows 7 won't complain. But you get Vista, you should complain. Okay, so what if you delivered the laptop, it's Windows 8, it's supposed to be Windows 8, instead giving Windows Vista. What can the buyer do? Either you can deduct damages from the price. I think if we were to say that laptop comes with Windows Vista, the value is going to be less than Windows 8. Yes. Or maybe more obvious. This, I'm looking at this now, I'm so happy because they issued us, finally upgraded the laptop after so many years. Finally got i7. But instead of i7, they gave i3. Is the i3 less valuable than the i7? Yeah, right? Antique. Maybe more expensive. Okay, i5 lah. Is the i5 worth less than i7? Yes. So he delivered an i5 instead of i7. So actually, there is a drop in the value of the product, right? So my option number one is I can deduct damages from the price. What do you think the price difference should be between i7 and i5? $300? Okay? Legit. $300. So I can deduct $300 instead of paying the guy. How much is this per year? I7. You can see that I haven't bought a laptop for a long time, depending on the company. Instead of paying whatever price, I pay the price minus $300. That's called deducting. Okay. What if I needed to? Okay, yeah. So that is the damages I'm going to claim, and the damages is the difference between the value of the goods and the value they will have if they fulfill the warranty. So if this was supposed to be 2K, but because they gave me a i5 is worth only 1,007, then I will just pay them 1,007. I will deduct the $300. The $300 is called my damages. Is it okay? Make sense? If it doesn't make sense, I'll shake it. Then I will say, then I will try to do it. Sure. Sure. Okay, you know I will carry on. Huh? Okay. Anyway, along the way, at the end of this, I aim to finish a little bit ahead of time so I can do a quick run through of the whole of Sale of Goods Act. Okay? Because this is the final Sale of Goods Act lecture. Then next week we go on to letters of credit. So I want to do a quick rundown. But if anything still is confusing, please write here because we still have one more lecture that we can clarify. Even on the last lecture, if you write down
because the letters of computers specifications are pretty critical that you may not even want to pay less for something that is offered to less.
Okay, very good. It's a specification of a computer, a condition or warranty. So for many of you, it's a condition because it's very important to you. Could there be a situation where it's only a warranty? Possible, like you say color, color. Yeah, color would be warranty. Yeah. Who else might consider the i5 versus i7 a warranty instead of condition? Okay, yes. If you're a gamer or whether you're using it for maybe just email and if it's an end consumer, like my mother, it doesn't matter to her whether i5 or i7, so long as she can check her Facebook, she's okay. So yes, and that's why condition of warranty is such a crucial thing which needs to be determined according to the situation. So that even if you put the word condition in the contract, the judge will look at it and see, is it really a condition? No? Is it really important to my mother whether it's i5 or i7? But it's very important to you because if it doesn't reach your spec, you cannot do the job that you want to do. So it's different. Okay, now come to your question. Can you get something else, something special, right? Because you wanted to get extra, right? So here's the one. First, you got the right to reject, then you got the right to get compensation. Now you got the extra, it's called special damage. Okay? Special damage, consequential loss. So you can get all this extra. Number one, wow, personal injury loss. Deliver the wrong product and then people got injured because of it. Serious, huh? Some of you maybe the product is delivery is quite sensitive, no, people can get injured. Or damages for wasted freight. You have to go and freight things here and there and you waste money. So these are all things which happen as a consequence of that particular breach. Or you lose money on the sub-sale. Yeah, so all of these are factors these are special additional damages. So good news, huh? You can also claim this. Right? So the three things, reject, compensation, and special damage. Okay, so what about accepting part of the goods? Because we went through this thing about can reject, can accept. Can reject less than the quality amount, cannot reject more. Can accept Installment cannot. So here, the first two paragraphs says that if you got multiple products and you're a buyer, you accept part of it, you can still reject the rest. Unless it comes in a set. If it comes in a set, then you take it all or leave it. Okay? Part A is that if you have many things coming, you can accept some, reject some. Unless part B, they all come in a set. Then you take it or leave it. Okay? So now we have all of these things in mind. Quick discussion question, 3 minutes. Okay. Okay, so how can Mary accept the right? So hopefully now we go through the whole thing, it makes more sense now. Okay, if it doesn't, I'm sorry. But I also asked a very good question. We go back to here, right? Okay. Now, the seller delivered something which didn't match, and then they are breaching a warranty. And then you want to go and buy something from the market. But you found a problem. Because the seller still want to deliver. And then they only breach a warranty, they haven't breached a condition. So you're having difficulty in terminating the contract. And if you don't terminate the contract, but you buy the product from outside, after that, how are you going to claim the compensation? Because the seller will say, you could have bought from me. So that is a point in which it becomes important to, in your contracts, you need to be very clear when you have the right to terminate. The clearer you are in your contract when you have the right to terminate, the more bargaining power, definitely the more power you will have. So what you need to specify what is really important so that you can actually stop. The power to reject and then claim damages is a very important right. Otherwise, here you are going to have this one, at least the item was delivered. Okay, so this one, the item was delivered, and in my case, I got I5 instead of I7. So I took the thing and I considered it to be not so important. It was a warranty, not a condition. So I just pay him less. But what if I wanted to reject? Then I would say it's a condition. If it's a condition, then I reject. Then it goes onto here, 51. Wrongfully neglects or refuses to deliver the goods. So how much was my I7 just now? Contract price was 2K, right? If I accepted the I5, I will only pay him 1,007. But what if he delivered the I5 and I say no, condition? What will I do? Reject. Then I'll go to the market. Then the market says now I7s have gone up in price. It's 2002. What will I do? I will gain the 200 extra from the seller. Does it make sense? Oh, you're nodding. Come see me go. Oh yeah, this is assuming that you cannot solve the thing. Yeah, correct. No, like I said, all these very sensible, logical things will not come out to the law. Yes. Right. So actually, normally when you ask a lawyer that question, the lawyer will be stumped for a while. Oh, you mean that? That's called as getting a settlement. It's an alien concept of lawyer. I shouldn't have recorded it. It's not defamation because I was one to, right? So I know. It's a conflict. When you reach a conflict, then you have this problem. Yeah. So the market price, I mean, I'm assuming that you actually tried and the seller does not have an I7. Otherwise, the seller would have given you I7. Okay, so we've now John and Mary. Now let's look at the seller's remedies. Seller also must have some rights, right? I cannot be so poor thing, right? So basically, if you are the seller and your buyer does not pay, if your buyer does not pay, that's number one, he didn't pay at all. Number two, he did not offer to pay. Tender is not exactly the same as you know the word tender. For you, tender is to bid. Here, tender is they offered to pay. Like they send a check. Right? They send a post-dated check. Even if partial payment has been made, even if the seller has sold credit. So these are all the rights, that the seller will have against the actual product. Remember, the buyer's rights of the product is the buyer can reject. But the seller's right, the seller can take back if the buyer has not paid. And so there's these three important words. Can you remember what they mean? The lien. What's the lien? The lien is I haven't given to you yet. I'm holding on until you pay. Okay? That means I must, as a seller, I must still be holding on the thing. It's ready already, but I'm holding on until you pay. In theory, who owns the goods when they're ready? Who owns the goods? Buyer. When it's ready, the buyer owns the goods. Remember, ownership passes when the goods are ready. But does it mean that the buyer is holding the goods yet? Not yet, because this guy can still be holding it. So what is his right? His right is to get paid first. You pay me. I know you own this. Good for you. But unless you pay me money, you're not going to take it out of my warehouse. Okay? So I'm holding on. This is legal blackmail. Yeah? It's legal blackmail. Okay? So in possession, that means he's holding it with him. Seller doesn't own it anymore, but he's still hanging on to it. Okay. Until either the guy pays him or he offers to pay. Assuming that there is no credit agreement. Of course, if it's like 60 days credit, you cannot do this kind of thing now. Or 90 days credit. Then that overrides this. Or credit expired. If it's 60 days credit, or maybe 7 days credit, and then day 8, still no money, and you still hold on. Okay. Or the buyer became insolvent. You know what insolvent is? Bankrupt. Yeah, cannot pay that. Bankrupt. So that's your legal right of blackmail. So this is if you are so lucky as the seller to still be holding on to the goods in your premises. But what if you are not so lucky? You have already put it into the truck. Then what do you do? It's already put onto the, or loaded it onto the ship, or loaded it onto the aircraft. How are you going to, what are you going to do now? You cannot hold on to it anymore. Stoppage, correct. You can stop it. Okay? You can stop it if the buyer is bankrupt. So you can take it back as long as they're in the course of transit. Option 3 is you can resell. So normally you can resell. This problem will happen if you resell the product to somebody else, and then 1 week later the buyer comes back, hey, I got the money. I'm sorry, too late. I have the right to resell. In many of your cases, you're thinking, I can't do this because my product is so customized, I can never resell to people else. But just in case. Just in case. If ever you want another buyer. Okay. So the warning to this is before you go and resell, before you happily resell to somebody else, please check whether the contract is still valid. Because if your contract says that you still actually owe, you still actually need to deliver, then you have to deliver. That is actually one of your biggest problems. So this right of resale, right? The right of resale is a major concern because you need to check whether the contract is still valid. And then how do you know whether the contract is valid or not? Is whether you have had the right to terminate the contract. How do you know whether you have to terminate the contract? Is whether you have breached a condition. So you see all inside, right? Okay. So when you're preparing for this, please draw out the arrow or the flow chart. When you draw the flow chart, it makes more sense. There's this very interesting thing called the action for the price. The action for the price is a fancy way for saying owe money, pay money. Yeah, it's called action for the price. Owe money, pay money. This is what happens when the seller, okay, first of all, he wanted to use a lien, but he's not holding it, it's not there anymore, it's not there. Empty-handed. Can he use a lien? Cannot use a lien. Option 2, he wanted to use the stoppage in transit, but where's the truck? No more truck, it's already arrived there. So option 1, lien is gone. Option 2, stoppage is gone. So how? The thing is there. Buyer says, okay, I got it now, thanks. I got ownership, I own it, and I got possession. Thank you, see you later. I don't pay. By all, this is one of the rare times where the law actually matches common sense. When it says that the seller can sue, okay? Because obviously the seller can sue. You hold on, you don't play, of course you can. He owns it, okay? He's got the possession of it as well, but he owes money. And this is called action for the price. So like this also must have a name. Yes, like this also must have a name. It's called action for the price. So, okay, the reason, all jokes aside, when you are actually answering any exam question, right? Test question, even though these things may seem very obvious, please state it. It's there. There's a section there. It may seem obvious to you, but you know, in the law, we want to also have the obvious things stated. Right? Some of you, you got the contract already. Oh, some of these things like obvious, but no, you still have to state it. Okay? Because you've already seen some things are completely nonsensical. I mean, sorry, some things are completely not according to your normal common sense. And because there are some things which don't match common sense and some things which match common sense, so you must actually state what is the act. And in our case, you notice that we've been looking at a lot of sections, right? So you must take sections. Okay? Don't just put in the theory, because I know I marked the exams for this subject for a number of years, and people will put in their very common sense answer and say, okay, I'm very glad you got common sense, but that doesn't help, because I need to know, do you know what is the law? Because your common sense may not match the law, right? In fact, if you could go by common sense, you don't need to be here tonight, because you already have common sense. The idea is that you're here because you want to know what is that section. So you can tell the other side, I not only have common sense, I have law. In some cases, I don't even need common sense because I have law. In cases, I don't even care about your common sense because I have the law. Okay? So when you are answering, please do not, let me see, I should find a way to say this better. I'm almost going to say, please do not use common sense. But you know what I mean, right? Please do not only use common sense. Please use common sense and the law. See, this one got a section. So if the property of goods has passed, then the seller may sue the buyer. Then you put bracket section 49. Right. Oh, section 49, Sale of Goods Act. Okay. Next week I'll go through how to earn point by point. I'm very transparent. I'll tell you how to earn point by point. Huh? Why to answer? Okay. So there's also damages for non-acceptance, because sometimes the buyer refuses to accept. Then the section 50 says the seller can sue for damages for non-acceptance. Okay, so first of all, what kind of damage do you think the seller is going to get? What is the first money that you will lose if the buyer does not accept? not counted. Warehousing is definitely there. Warehousing is definitely there. Transport cost is definitely there. Delivery is definitely there. Yeah. Fluctuation of price is there, very good. Fluctuation of price is there. Fluctuation of the price means that if okay, now I'm putting myself as the seller, right? You go to resell, then you end up reselling at a lower price. So you got out of the difference. Huh? Higher cannot claim lah. You go and claim, or you go to the judge and say, Your Honor, I wish to get the difference. Then you say, what is the difference? How much money did you lose? Actually, I didn't lose. I earned. And the judge will tell you, you pay him. That's right. Waste my time. You see, basically, you know, this Jurong, there's a lake down there, right? Go and jump. Okay. So there's also one big part. What is the money which you as a seller will lose out if the buyer wrongfully terminates the contract? What is the most basic money that you lose out if the buyer terminated? The price that he was going to pay you, right? Contract price. That is the most basic amount. If I was going to sell this to you at 2K and then you reject for no good reason, I will sue you for 2K because we have a deal. I'm supposed to get 2K for you, and this is already here. Can take, even though halfway through lecture it was a job. But I'm not complaining. Okay, so the contract price is the first part of damages. If you can sell to somebody else, then you won't claim for the whole contract price. You only claim for the difference in the market. Okay, so that's what you can do as a seller. So you can see, we want to rewind back. If you are the buyer, you can reject, right? If you reject, straightforward, you're not paying already. And if you have to go and buy the product from somewhere else, you'll probably get the additional compensation. Right? You have to pay more. When you have to pay less, then don't claim now. You can also, since you're you can get special damage, right? What's the special damage? Remember? Trade charges and anyway, you know which line, Whereas if you are the seller and your buyer didn't pay, you get lien, stoppage, resale, action for price, very good. And the last one, compensation for the loss suffered. Okay, so that is what we have for the remedies of the buyer and seller. Okay, now I want to go back in because we are here to look at the previous week's one. Okay. I know that this one is also a complicated topic. So I will let me go back to the slide. One is closed, screen share. Okay, so this one is last week, right? Okay, so the first week one, I think is very straightforward. We know that there are certain things that must be there, right? Should I open that one also? You want me to go all the way back to, no need, The rights, you know what the rights are, right? All lah, there's only got 5 weeks one. How can we not any week? Cannot leave out anything lah, this one. Okay, I start from the top. Huh? Okay, start from the top. Okay, starting from the top. Yeah. Screen share. Implied terms. Okay, so if you have a sale of goods contract, that one, how do you know it's sale of goods? First, there must be a sale, and it must be for goods. Okay, if it's a sale and it is for goods, then you use the act. That's why it's called sale of goods act. Okay, and you use it because they are all implied terms. Implied terms meaning that if you have something in your contract which is expressed, who will win? If you have something in your contract which is expressed, who will win? The contract or the implied terms? Contract, yes. Contract looks first. Implied will come in later. Okay, if there's a gap. And so what are the things? Okay, is time of the essence? Yes or no? Is time of the essence by default if you don't say time is of the essence? It's not. It's not clear. Okay, at least it is not clear. They will say it is usually of the essence, but it is not clear. Okay, so you must actually state clearly it's of the essence. Yeah. Normally it would be clear, but you want to make sure. Okay. So the first right, section 12, you must have the right to sell. So you cannot be stolen goods, cannot be, okay? Remember this one? Don't have to pay at all. What about this one? If you have, not only that, it mustn't be under hire purchase or mortgage or anything, okay? Section 13, it must match description. The one we know, Is there any loophole? There's a loophole if the buyer did not buy according to the description. Is there such a thing? Remember this? Hey, where's my supposed to be a case? You put a case. Sometimes the buyer might buy because they saw the product and they didn't read the description. So in that case, are they buying by description? No. So if it doesn't match the description, you can't take any action. This only if you are buying because of the description. It's section 13. Okay? Section 14 must be satisfactory quality. Okay? And of course, all the loopholes, all the second part are also important. Okay? Because it might be tested on the first half or the second half. So you must see the loophole. How do you know whether something is satisfactory? The things are here, right? So if you ever ask the question on whether something is satisfactory quality or not, you can go through this. So remember this question? First one, second half with minor scratches. Do you consider that to be satisfactory or not? First one, second hand car minor scratches. Satisfactory or not? Yes, because you take into account the price, what you expect from it is satisfactory. Second one, new car minor scratches. Not, don't say, you're very fast. Third one, second-hand car cannot be driven safely. Satisfactory? No. Okay, that one. Huh? So last one is sold as a prop to be blown up, cannot be driven safely. Doesn't matter, right? Whether it can be driven or not doesn't matter. You just want to tow it somewhere and blow it up. Okay. Now, fitness for purpose, remember, is different from satisfactory, right? Satisfactory is a general thing. It's a general thing. It's whether people consider, depending on circumstances. But fitness for purpose is very specific. It is the buyer. What purpose do you want it for? It's your own purpose. It's not according to what the world thinks, whether it's satisfactory or not. It's your own personal purpose. So what's your own personal purpose? It's up to you. And 15 must match the sample. So I'm sure I have some questions here. Oh, don't have. Maybe next week I'll give you some example questions. Okay, this one we just did through, right? This one we all went through already. Now, the United Nations Convention. What is it? Was you getting? Actually, the most important thing to know is that there are certain duties, okay? Right? That there are 30, 31, 32, 33, 35, 41, 42. Just to know that such duty exists. Okay? Because the more pressing thing for us is actually the local sale of goods. Yeah? I apologize for those of you who are always doing international work. Maybe I'm not covering what you wanted. Okay. Now, passing of risk. Passing of risk. Okay, passing of risk. Screen share to passing of risk. Okay, turn over to passing of risk. There we go. So the whole problem of passing of risk is that whether we know whether it belongs or doesn't belong. Remember this thing called unascertained goods and ascertained goods? Right? Ascertained goods means you know what it is, you can see the thing. But what if there is like one, what was the example that we had? The guy was supposed to load in the product. What product was it? Actual one. He was supposed to load something into the sack for delivery. Barley. Is it barley? He's supposed to load in the barley. And he already loaded the barley, but he hasn't delivered yet. Was it ascertained or not ascertained? Ascertained because he already marked it out, right? If he didn't load into the thing, it's not ascertained yet, right? Okay. What makes a difference? If it is ascertained, then it will follow that you follow the terms of the contract or the conduct of the parties. What if he hadn't loaded in yet? Then the property depends. It won't pass until the goods are ascertained. Okay, so this one. Right? These are, you go and buy shoes, you can straight away you know that it is, and once you offer and you accept the offer, property has passed already. Even though the guy didn't take it with him, the ownership is already passed already. Even though the money hasn't crossed over yet, the ownership passed already. That seems a bit strange to us, right? But don't worry, because you are worried because, wow, he hasn't taken with him, then he doesn't. But it's okay, because he has ownership, he has the right to take it with him. True? And maybe you are the seller, you're worried, how come he hasn't paid yet? But don't worry, you have the right to sue for action for price. See how these things add together? So the law says that ownership has already passed, even though this thing is sitting there. But don't worry, seller has the right to get paid, buyer has the right to take it within. Okay? So you don't, the property has passed to him, even though it's to the lay person, right? The lay person says, huh, really? Property passed already? I thought property will only pass when I pass the money. No, once the contract is decided, property passes. It's kind of weird. If you want to try and apply that to your situation in products that you are dealing with, your contracts actually are very clear on when the property passes. Because of this problem, this is okay with a pair of shoes. The impact is not very clear. But when you are dealing with the size of contracts that you are dealing with, 5-figure sum, 6-figure sum, 7-figure sum, it's no longer a pair of shoes. Right? That's why your contracts are so detailed on when does ownership pass. Right? So this actually is a situation, this is what will happen if your contract left out that clause. Moral of the story, your contract should not leave out that clause. Don't let it fall back to this situation, because this situation should only apply to small items. Right? So what about this one? Does it pass? Has ownership, has property passed to the seller from seller to buyer? So how come you all say no? Because in the previous one you say yes, right? Yes, there's actual terms here. The terms actually say that they both agree. Okay? They actually agree on these terms. And when there's express term overrides sale of goods act. Okay. So this is the one where you are supposed to do something customized. The product is not ready yet. It's not like shoes. It is making customized. For many of you, you are making customized product. Property will pass when your product is actually completed and the buyer, you have told the buyer. Again, you're wondering, hey, wait, then how come ownership can pass? He hasn't paid me yet. Don't worry, you have the right to sue for action for price. Yeah, there we go. I finished assembling the computer. Now property has passed to me. Don't worry, you can still sue action for price. Okay, what are you supposed to weigh or measure? I finished measuring, the price is 100. Okay, ownership can pass. Right? So we just remember that even though the product might be sitting here, the ownership has already passed over. So in a way, the risk has passed over also. Okay. This one, who has ownership? As agreed, I delivered the shoes last month, but actually I don't want to take ownership yet. What is it? Huh? Buyer, by this theory, right? When he retains the goods beyond a certain time without giving notice of rejection, ownership passes. Right? So it's sitting with it so long, it's taken ownership already. And anyway, what does the seller have? The seller has the right to sue for action for price. Correct. Why does the seller want to say that? Okay. The buyer has ownership. Huh? Pass the risk already, correct? He doesn't want to take it back. He's been sitting with you for 1 month already. I don't want to take it back already. Yeah. I take back your smelly shoes, I don't know where to buy. Okay. This is the Bali case. Huh? The Bali case was there to illustrate that it's kind of hard to distinguish when is whether or not. Okay, so you look at 200 bottles of Bali, he sells it by 100. So he sells it the sacks. So in this case, the sacks arrive, and so he filled them, and the buyer say, wait, I don't want to take, I don't want to take. He said, but I already filled it. But you're still in your possession. But in this case, what did the law say? It's already passed already. This one? Different situation, right? He was supposed to manufacture the bicycles, pay first, and then he packed it in a container, then the company got one up. Alright, it should be ready, right? But did the ownership pass? Sway. It's actually quite difficult to figure out why did they think this way, but it's just like that. If there's anything I learned from this is that this ascertain, unascertain is very risky. Which is why your contracts are so detailed as to whether when property will pass. Because seriously, if you leave it to the common law, you will have all this uncertainty. That's why your contract is so detailed. Okay. So all of this remember this one? Hey, oh dear, I shouldn't have done that. Screen share back. Yeah. Hey. Any screen there. I think it was very complicated. Why must they hide the thing? Hey, wrong presentation. Wow. Okay, I have absolutely confused myself now. Oh, okay, I see it now. Whoever is watching this on video, I apologize. I apologize to those of you who are watching it live also. Here I am. So who is correct? She offered to sell the car for 20K and he accepted for buying contract, but then the car is destroyed by a big accident. And she didn't know that. How? The car was destroyed even before they made the contract and she didn't know because she happened to be here on the road. The car was somewhere else. It's a mistake. So, is there a contract? Is there a void, huh? Okay, contract void. Okay, Romapa clause, remember? Romapa clause. You offer to sell aluminium foil, right? And the contract says the ownership is only transferred when he has paid everything. So after he delivers, he said, I'll pay you later. Then he subsells, right? He subsells and he makes 35K. Then his company goes on. So how? Can they claim the 35K? Yes, they can, because the aluminium actually still belongs to them. Okay? Why didn't they ask for the whole 122? Because the company was already liquidated already, but the 35K was still sitting there. In case you're wondering, why did they ask for the 122? Because the company was liquidated. All they had left was the 35K. Okay? This one, if you don't own it, you cannot sell it. Right? So a thief trying to sell it, the buyer does not have the right to own it. Because the thief never had the right to sell it, so the buyer does not have the right to buy it. Except for the 5 situations which are listed. Certain buyers will have the right. Okay? Yeah, a different reason. If the seller was possessing, or if the buyer was possessing. So this is the basic situation. If you buy stolen goods, you don't have a right. Unless there is a particular reason why you are buying these stolen goods. I hope nobody is buying stolen goods. Okay. No, I didn't hear you say that. Free market, okay. You will only get a good title to it if option 1, the seller has the what do you call documents to say that the goods are legitimate and you bought it in good faith, not knowing about it. The seller sold it to somebody else. Okay, this one we're not talking about stolen goods. Stolen goods is the next one. This one, you bought the product from your supplier, but actually you didn't know your supplier actually promised it to somebody else. Promise it to your neighbor. Then after your neighbor comes and say, hey, wait, how come you got the thing? It's meant to be for me, you know. Then you say, hey, I didn't know it. I didn't know the guy is still holding on to it. He's got all the title documents and he transferred to me. I didn't know about you. Protected. Okay? Your neighbor cannot claim. But this one, buyer in possession. So if you have bought the goods, if a person having bought goods has the consent of the seller, then if you receive in good faith, meaning that you didn't know about it and without notice, right? Then this as if the person making the delivery is still valid. Okay. Doesn't make sense, right? First of all, we must have a person who bought goods. So let's say I have bought goods. I have bought it from a seller. Let's say my seller is Mrs. Annie Gomez. Okay? And she has given me consent, right, to hold on to the goods. So I am the person who has bought goods from Annie Gomez and I'm holding on to the goods. So imagine that this file actually belongs to Annie and I bought it from her. And with her consent, I'm holding on to the file. Okay? So if I'm holding on to this and I sell it to any of you, it will be a valid sale. Whether or not I actually own this. Do you know that I could actually be holding this even though I don't actually own it? Right? Maybe I didn't pay her yet. Right? Or maybe there was some term that I haven't completed yet. So I don't actually own it. But then I am a sneaky fellow. I come to class and say, good now. Special price. Any Gomez song? There we go. Then Annie comes in and says, hey, wait. Who bought the yellow bulb? Ben hasn't paid for it yet. He doesn't own it. He shouldn't be selling it. What are you going to say? You're going to say that I am the buyer receiving, I'm the person receiving a good faith and without notice. So it's valid. So she cannot take back the yellow bulb from you. Fair enough? Does it make sense now? Okay. So that is basically in a nutshell, that's what you have to say on goods. Okay? And some of it maybe doesn't make sense. Don't worry. It's true, it doesn't make sense. Huh? It's tested. What? No, it's tested because it doesn't make sense. So what I'm saying is that, okay, jokes aside, that one, some of it, if it's very complex, anyway, you just read it a couple more times, okay? Illustrations. We will try some questions, right? And then we will go through. Please write down if there's any specific area you want me to cover again. If I can't cover in the next lecture, I will at least try to make a short video about it. But please do write down. Please also write down what you understand clearly, so I won't go through it again. Okay? So next week, we are back to the usual timing of Tuesday, and we will cover a lovely topic called level of credit and performance. Thank you.